Well, for those just joining us, another warm welcome to Gnosis Cardia Show on Blog Talk Radio. This is your host, Ngoni Al speaking, and we have a special guest with us this evening, Ahveekhy. I'm going to bring him on the line. But before I do, I'd like to give out the call-in number. That's 347-308-8131, and you can also join us online in the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com/Gnosis Cardia. Okay, without further ado, let me welcome our special guest, Ahveekhy. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really happy and
honored. Pardon me?
I said I'm happy and thrilled to be here.
And I'm honored and excited to have you here, too. Who would have thought in 2005, 9,000 miles away, we would be here on Blog Talk Radio doing this?
That's right. That's right.
Yes. So, Ahveekhy, would you like to tell us, the audience, a little bit about yourself before you start your presentation?
Sure. I first want to say that the timing is perfect because it's been 7 years just about since I returned back to America from living in Ghana. And all that time, it was very difficult to formulate words or to express the things that I experienced. So when people ask me, well, how is it? How you went to Africa? How was it? It almost seemed like people were expecting a response like when you go on vacation, you go to Florida for 2 weeks or to Disney World or take a cruise. But I just couldn't really tell them in a few words what it was like, and it was even hard to express even in many words what it was like. So it's taken this amount of time, the last year or two, that I can really start to express what happened and really tell the stories and actually put the people in the setting so they would understand. So it took a while. So the timing is perfect. So I wanted to start by just giving a little background of how it all led up for me to go to Africa. And it answers the question that many people ask, when they hear that I went to Africa, well, what made you do that? And, of course, there's always a short answer, but then there's always that thorough, long answer. So I get a chance to really discuss all those questions at length. So I was born in New York in the late 50s, so 1958. So the timing, as you can see, was very appropriate to the African movement, the African freedom movement, because that was the time when, if I remember correctly, Kwame Nkrumah led his country to freedom from colonialism from Britain. I think that was in 58, 57, something like that, and started that whole movement across Africa. So that's the time frame I was born. And I remember growing up, living in Queens and Brooklyn, and how that Black Power movement started to take place, the consciousness of Black people in America trying to take a stand for who they were and just move to the next level. And I remember the Black Power, the Black Panthers with the fist raising up. And so all that was such an exciting time because there was so much movement going on. It was almost turbulence, but it was movement. And it was people waking up, so to speak. So that's the time I lived. But it was also a time still of great prejudice and racism because growing up in the North, we didn't experience it as much as when we traveled down south. I remember going down south to Texas, where we used to go to an annual convention, church convention, and when we would have the service in church, it would be a big, huge place where we'd meet, and the church had their own grounds and their own property, but they had to abide by those strict segregation laws. So I remember black people would be sitting in one section, and white people would be sitting in another section, and you couldn't meet. You couldn't sit together. So those are the highlights of those times. I remember James Brown singing Black and I'm Proud. And so that was the time frame. And I remember also, it seems like almost like a movie where it's clips. I just remember clips during that time because I was very young, growing up in the 60s. And I remember one night we were coming home and from church Bible study with my parents, and we were living in Brooklyn at the time. And I was sleeping on the back seat, and so were my sisters. We were all laying down sleeping. And I heard my father saying, "Oh, we can't cross this avenue because it was a riot. People were running up and down the streets, and that was when Martin Luther King was assassinated." So that gives you a little idea of the time frame growing up. But still, with all that, the only really idea of Africa that I had was the Tarzan movies with Tarzan swinging from the trees and the natives with their grass skirts. And the other thing was the safari. So that was basically what I had a perception of Africa. I didn't really have any idea other than that. But as time grew, or as time went on, that developed over time. But it really didn't start to sink in till probably the 90s. Gradually it was coming to my mind, but it didn't really sink in till the 90s that who I was and what Africa was all about, and the excitement of, well, let me see what Africa is all about, and learning more about African American history even, because we didn't have access to that in school. I remember we did have a course that was introduced in high school, but I never was able to take it for some reason. So that gives you a little bit of background of how it began. And my parents did not emphasize that part of it. They emphasized spiritual development. And on hindsight, I see that was very wise choice. Their main thrust for those years was trying to know who the Creator was and getting that intimate relationship and connection to have the guidance in their life that was needed. And they instilled us with so much of that growing up, so that by the time I did reach the stage where Africa became prominent in my mind, I was able to have a good perspective on it, and I was able to have the direction in the spiritual sense as to how to go, what to do, and so forth and so on. So that gives you a little bit of background on, is that what you were talking about?
Well, yes, and also I thought maybe you might share a little bit of your bio with the audience, but just proceed as you wish.
Okay, all right. Well, I as you can see, it's actually written. It's the short form of my bio. I'm a performing artist. I am a vocalist, or what is called a singer-songwriter. I'm a producer. I produced quite a few shows. One major show I produced when I first came back from Africa was in 2008. I returned. I left the States in 1997 and returned to the States in 2007. And in 2008, I think it was 2007, I met someone who was actually with an organization, Multicultural Initiative of the Arts Association, and they primarily supported people of African descent in the arts. And the sister, her name was Demetria Borchella, she approached me about applying for a grant. It took me a year to do that, and I applied for a grant to do a production which I called Let's Rise Again, Ahveekhy. And Ahveekhy it's spelled Ababio, and it's a Ghanaian word, or the Akan language, because they have many languages in Ghana, which means one who has gone and has returned. So that appropriately fits African Americans because of the fact that many of us passed through Ghana to the Americas through the cross-Atlantic slave trade. And an interesting thing about Ghana is that being on the west coast of Africa, it's pretty centrally located in West Africa. You have Liberia on one side, more toward the western side of West Africa, and you have Nigeria on the eastern side, more of West Africa, and Ghana is somewhere in between there, and it's on the coast, off of the Gulf of Guinea. And along the coast of West Africa, there are approximately 44 or 45 slave castle dungeons and forts. And 33 of those monuments are in Ghana. So you can see that was a big transit point for Africans through the slave trade. So that's something that I have produced. Also, I'm the founder of Deliverance Music Ministries, which is a pretty broad. I'm a pretty broad performer. I don't conform to just one genre. I have a wide variety of genres that I do. So I also do praise and worship music. I do jazz. I do R&B. I do reggae. So I do the whole spectrum, and I write songs.
Wow.
I'm also a teacher. I teach music and other things. I'm a writer, write songs, and write periodicals. Lecturer also. I've been doing a lecture series on exactly what we're talking about now. So that's pretty much. Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to thank you for sharing with us about your background and also about what inspired you to take the journey. But I wanted to ask you what you felt like the first time you went into the slave dungeons.
Oh, that's an interesting question. To give you a little background of what led up to me being able to go to Africa, I went first for a visit in 2006, and the visit came about because I was talking with my sister. She was living in New York, and I was living in Chicago at the time, and the whole family actually, most of my family, or my father, my mother, and my two sisters lived in New York, and I lived in Chicago. And all of us became involved with different Hebrew Israelite organizations, and the one that they were involved with was in New York. And my sisters, my brother-in-law, he wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, had gone to Africa, and the leader of that particular organization was actually had moved to Ghana. So I called my sister one day, and we were talking about getting some joint property or a house together or property together. And so we were discussing, well, where are we going to do it? And so we were talking about New York and different parts of New York. And then all of a sudden a light bulb went on in my head. I said, well, what are we talking about doing it here for? Why don't we? Doesn't your organization have plots of land for sale? We could buy property there, and then we could save up money for 5 or 10 years, and then go and build something. And she said, yeah, you can do that. so? I said, hurry up, because this, you know. So she called and found out that there was something like 2 plots left, and that there were some people in Atlanta that were interested in buying it. So if we wanted to get a plot, we would have to move quickly. So I said, so we, you know, that prompted, that created an urgency. So I said, well, let's do it. What do we have to do? I think we had to put a small deposit on to hold it, and then we started planning on flying to, taking. At the time, I was working for the airlines, and unfortunately, the airline that I was working with did not have flights there to Accra, so I couldn't use them. But I had to take time off and get the time off, and so I got this number to call the person in Ghana, and they asked me, well, how long are you going to stay? I said, about 2 or 3 days, because that's what I was used to doing, traveling, going to different places in the world, stay a few days, come back home. I'm in America. I'm home. I'm fine. And he said, oh, no, you have to spend at least 2 weeks. So that's why I had to skate, because I didn't have vacation time left, and I had to try to get those 2 weeks off. So we saved our money, put our resources together, and we ended up traveling to Ghana in March of 2006. So, of course, the first trip, or one of the first monuments you go to, is the slave castle dungeons. And we went to Cape Coast. That's where we stayed. The brother lived in Cape Coast. And Cape Coast, for those of you that are not familiar with Ghana, is one of the coastal cities that used to be. It's a prominent city that used to be the capital of Ghana, but now Accra is the capital. And it's noted for a slave castle dungeon and a fort. And that monument came to the attention of, the Monuments Preservation, something of that nature. So they did a lot of restoration to try to bring it so that people can take a look at it. And then next door to that city is another city called Elmina. So they're both into fishing. There's a lot of fishing boats and that type of thing. And so in Cape Coast, that's the most popular one. We went to the castle dungeon, and the first thing that we noticed and we were already prepared for was that doing the restoration, whoever was in charge, I think it was the World Heritage Foundation or something like that, they were trying to, they were doing like a whitewash of the place. They were trying to clean it up, taking away the evidence of what happened. So the outside was painted all white and beautiful, and you go inside. But the dungeons, even though they did clean them up, it still had that, some of the remains of what was left, because on the floor they were saying that there were layers and layers of just blood and feces and excrement and vomit from where the slaves were packed in so tight, or, the African people was just crammed in there so tight, chained together, no food, no light, very little water, and many of them became sick. And that was the last station before they left out through the door of no return. So that monument was right there on the coast, right there on the water. And so, it was, it didn't overly affect me, and I think part of it was because it was so whitewashed by that time. So you could still see the remains, and you could still see the horror of what happened. But that a lot of people go through many different types of emotions, and my emotions were pretty balanced, but it did still have a profound effect upon me, because I saw you could see what really happened. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, Ahveekhy, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. I'm having a flashback, but yes, it did.
Oh, I see. But in honor of the ancestors that passed before us, and went through that horrific experience, I want to do a song that was written by Bob Marley. It's called Redemption Song. And many people say, or many people that know about the song, or that some people that knew Bob Marley, like, as you might remember, Bongo Shorty, who passed away. You know Bongo from Jamaica?
Yes, I remember Bongo Shorty.
Well, he used to play. He played with the original Wailers that played with Bob Marley. So he was a percussionist. You knew that, right?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
And he also built boats.
Yes.
And
he did. But I wanted to talk about what he was saying to me, how when he first wrote that song, that he had a discussion with Bob Marley, and they pretty much knew that this song would probably be something that could cause him to be a marked man at that time. So many of you who are familiar with the Redemption Song know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and play that song. Old pirates, yes, they're robbers, sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. Oh, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We flowered in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I'll ever hear, oh Lord, redemption songs. These songs of freedom. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. Oh, how long shall they kill our prophets while we just stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I'll ever hear, oh Lord, redemption songs. These songs of freedom. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. Oh, how long shall they kill our prophets while we just stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? But all I'll ever hear, oh no, redemption songs. These songs of freedom.
Thank you, Ahveekhy. So, that's very nice. And when you first shared that with me, I wasn't familiar with the lyrics, and you pointed out that it said atomic.
Yes. Atomic energy.
Atomic energy.
Right. So atomic bomb, and because America's government and America in general has been infiltrated, the leaders of the country of the globalists, it puts America's government always on an agenda to conquer and pillage. So the atomic bomb was one of those methods of doing that, just going to nations and bombing them. So, yes,
and I think, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just about to say, and I think it's very interesting that that song is probably, a couple of decades old?
Yes, at least. Just a little bit more than that, probably about 30 years, I believe. Or
wow,
more.
And here we are today facing the same thing.
Yes, that's true. Because once the enemy gets the foothold in a place, that foothold continues to grow unless it's removed. So it's just has gotten worse. But, of course, the enemy will not succeed, as we know. We know the Creator is in control of everything, so He only allows it to go but so far. But so that was how it all started.